Welcome again. This is Brother G coming to you again with another video message, another video teaching. Sprinkling or immersion. Now, don't know where it originated from. Don't know who was the originator who gave it or forced it upon anyone. But just looking at it in the 21st or the 25th century or whatever. Whatever. Sprinkling or immersion. Which is it? Which one of the ritualistic practice should we be converted to or use? Which one? Sprinkling or immersion? Now, the Catholic Church do sprinkling, which I see as much easier than water baptism. Sprinkling, they can just, I don't know if this is their process, they can just get some water, pray over the water, and just go around sprinkling it upon people. That's much more easier and less stress on getting water. But when you do immersion, you have to, if you don't have, close by seawater, you have to go find a seawater. You have to go travel out to the seawater. If they're close by a river water, you have to go find river water and go travel out to the river water. And as I see a video one other day, make sure you can swim and make sure where you're standing up in the water for baptize. Make sure, say, those areas are shallow enough that the water won't take you away. Then if they're close to sea or they're close to river, you have to go build a pool in your sanctuary, especially if you live in an urban city. If you live maybe in a suburban place, it might be a less easier. So in real term, sprinkling for a symbolic gesture of being baptized seem more easier and less stress. People, you don't have to go look for no body of water. You can sprinkle it. But the question that Brother G want for ask and answer according to the scriptures with them give we are forced upon we. Which one of these is the right path or the right way? Either one should convert to the other or the other convert to the other. Meaning, either you start sprinkling or fully immersion. And as I say, my conscience tell me says sprinkling look much more easier than actually water baptism, as me just laid out some of the basic issues that's going to be derived from looking for a body of water to immerse people in, which means fully baptized. But when the wisdom come to me and me understand the thing, me realize it's not really sprinkling or immersion. It's neither. It's not sprinkling or immersion. And I'm just me I say it reality expose both of them, say none of them is what the scripture actually talk about. But anyways, let's go into my first refutation of both sprinkling and immersion. And as I laid out before to you, if I should choose, if I should build a church and call the church Brother G Church, me would I institute sprinkling because it's a less stress. Me not have to go look for no water. Me can just spray over the water and just sprinkle it. But in reality, it's none of them. It's neither sprinkling or immersion based upon the very Bible where them force upon us or give to us if you take it, So I'm going to show you plainly from my one, a full of scriptures. I'm going to show you plainly say it's neither sprinkling nor immersion. Let's get into it. Romans 12 verse 2. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind to prove that which is acceptable, which is good in the sight of God. Of course, may I paraphrase a little bit. Let me explain just a little teeny bit of the context of Romans 12, not throwing away from Romans 1 to verse 12. When you look at Romans, basically, Paul was coming to the Romans Christian. Obviously, the most prominent of voices in the Roman church was Greek, Latin, Hebrew. Me never see no other written language that was there. So those are some of the most prominent of voices. And by understanding even that little bit of context, the more prominent of voices, we know so then any other group will come into any of those churches, what they're going to be contending with is understanding Greek, understanding Hebrew, and understanding Latin, because those are the most prominent of voices and language and culture that was in the church. So if you come from a different language or understanding, you're going to have problem, because those are the most prominent of voices. So anyways, to get back to the context of Romans, is to understand really what Paul was saying to the Romans Christian who start follow the Jewish idea of God and circumcision, is to say, them say them are teachers. Go if you read Romans 1, 2, and 3. Them say them are teacher, and them know the will of God, and them know the studies, and them know everything about God. But yet still them a thief, them a lie according to the book, the context of Romans 12. And they, Paul called, they are the people of the the concision, are, I know me, Paul called them dogs and all kind of thing. And me call them, I don't know, the same scripture. So when you look on chapter 12, verse 2 of Romans, and you see it like that. So he's saying, be not conformed to this world. That means that he's saying that these Roman people are those who send the letter to, shouldn't be conformed to the world. Understanding in this context is the circumcision and the Jews them according to the text. And me I say it, and the text I say it. Paul is calling them the world. So when Paul here is talking about the world, him not talk about the world as people who is not in no religious sect. Paul here in context is calling those Roman Jewish people who was following him and now try to kill him. I call them, it's their concept of the world. That's contextually. But when I come back to either sprinkling or immersion, let's look at the reference and look at what Paul is saying to the Roman church in this. Him say, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove, see there, you have to test it, what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of the Spirit of truth, or the Spirit or the kingdom of light. So anything will come to you, you have to test it. And you have not only test it, you have to see if it's good. That means it's good, it's beneficial, it's something that you can build upon, it's something that you can establish. Now, when you look on the ritual of sprinkling and immersion and looking at this by wisdom, you realize sprinkling can't transform your mind. It can't transform your mind or renew your mind. Neither baptism, neither physical water baptism. So whether you use the water and sprinkle, whether you put God in the water, whatever you want to put in the water and you're sprinkling, that's just a ritualistic, symbolic gesture of being born again that we can forego, and you still can be born again according to the scriptures. Make a show now. So when you look at this idea, and we are take it a little bit out of context, but it's not really we are take it out of context. The idea of somebody to be transformed is not the outward ritualistic things that we all endeavor to do and things that will bring people in the kingdom. The real understanding of to be in this context, as we are going to go through it again, to be even born again, is your mind being renewed depending on where you are. But I'm going to show you even a next better way, which is actually there, and it's actually there in our reality. And to show you, say, sprinkling and immersion are both misconception of how a person is transformed mentally, psychologically, spiritually. Yes, sprinkling and immersion are both misconception of how a person is transformed spiritually, mentally, or psychologically. Yes. No amount of sprinkling and no amount of immersion over years will transform a person's mind or renew a person's mind. So no matter how much we are go through the ritualistic of sprinkling and immersion, there will be no transformation, because sprinkling don't prove what is true. Baptism can't prove what is true. You have to prove and test what is true with your conscience and with your mind, with your God-given mind and your God-given conscience. And then when you find that which is perfect and acceptable that you can build upon and is acceptable, then that is what you do. Again, sprinkling and immersions are both misconceptions. Here is what these two ideas or concept miss. You can baptize children way before their birth, their actual coming out of their mother's womb. But for argument's sake, we're going to wait till them come out of the womb. There is an initial first baptism that it seems to me many parents, many group miss that first mark. They miss that first target. No matter what a lot of people want to say, oh, this is what we do. A lot of people miss the first baptism. They miss the first task. Really, it's parents, our society, our group before children. They miss the first baptism, which is not sprinkling, which is not immersion. You can't put the baby underneath the water. Literally, every one of us miss clearly the first baptism. And yes, here's the answer. You should baptize children from the earliest you can, maybe from 6 months old, maybe 1 month old, maybe 2 years old, 1 month, but as early as possible, you must baptize, fully immerse children under the water of truth. That's the first baptism many of us miss. Here, one of the statements what Solomon says, and reality speaks, our wisdom scream this aloud. Train up the child in the way he should grow, and when him grow older, him will never depart from it. I'm still say eloquent people not understand this. Train up the child, so now there is no age there, it's just a child. But wisdom tell me, say, you have to train up that child way before them can talk. This is the first baptism. Neither sprinkling physical water upon or fully immersion of that child, but literally it's a psychological, mental, spiritual baptism. You have to surround that child or babies, as we modernize it now to kind of make a distinction from child but babies. So we have to train up the child, immerse them, surround them with what is good morally and beneficially. So this is the first baptism where whole heap of people miss. Them forget it. Me never hear nobody talk about this. This is the first baptism where we literally miss. And the second baptism then have to come into play, which is not physical water nor sprinkling. Because as Paul said to the Romans, is to be transform your mind by renewing it and learn and prove that which is acceptable. So obviously, another child are going to prove what is acceptable. Or those who come before the child or the babies are going to prove what is acceptable. And when acceptable, them are going to dash away. And them only going to surround the child, which is spiritual baptism, mental baptism, psychological baptism. You're going to surround that child with that initial baptism. And many of us fail, or even when the New Testament come, those people who were lost, they fail. So there needs to be a second baptism, which most had failed, or disregard, or lost, or it was trampled on, meaning it's dormant in them understanding. So after the initial baptism is missed, here comes the second baptism, which is still not sprinkling of water, and it's still not immersion of water. Why? Let's look what the New Testament say about the second baptism. Here comes the second baptism, which is neither sprinkling of water or immersion of water. If you remember the teaching of Nicodemus and the Spirit of truth coming to Nicodemus to teach him, and Nicodemus was a teacher of Israel, and him never know about the second birth, because them forego or miss the first initial birth, which is to train up the child in the moral and beneficial things. So obviously, if you miss the first birth, then there needs to be a second birth, which is spiritually, mentally, and psychologically, right? So when Nicodemus come and I talk to Jesus and I start about and Jesus tell him about the first birth, Nicodemus said, "What am I gonna go back up in my mother and be born again?" And Jesus said, "Boy, you're a teacher for Israel and you don't know them basic thing there. If you miss the first birth of being born morally, psychologically, and mentally, which is a child, it clearly tells you this. Then if you did born that way and you grew up that way, there's no need for a second birth." We don't know this. All right. Okay. There is no need for a second birth. But if the first birth is missing, that true birth, being surrounded by what is good and moral and bringing up the child in that idea, if that birth is missing, then there needs to be a second teaching, which is a spiritual birth. So Nicodemus are talking about carnal, but they already missed that carnal birth already. They missed that one, which they should have been, they should have hanged the laws, which is morally, and truth around the children neck, in the sense that they might lead the children them spiritually through a spiritual understanding. They missed that mark. So there needs to be a second birth. So now Jesus tell him about the spirit and the water, which is spirit and truth. The water is a reference to drinking what is true. It's still not telling you to baptize in the spirit and water, physical water or water and spirit. It's talking about spirit and spiritual water where you drink and you're not thirst anymore, or spiritual manna where you eat and you're not hungry no more, meaning that's wisdom is being produced out of your body, out of your conscience. It's spiritually, it's mentally, it's psychologically. That's the second birth if the first birth is missing. And a matter of fact, let me not get into this. I don't want it to be confusing, but I'm just lay out this, that neither sprinkling or immersion will transform a person's mind, and it won't renew a person's mind. This is evident. It's a spiritual, mental, psychological birth. If it's from a child and you miss that one, that means a big adult child need to be born again spiritually, mentally, and psychologically. So it's neither sprinkling of the physical water, nor is this the immersion of physical water. It has proven nothing. The new has come or been here. The understanding is always here. So many people still believe that John the Baptist was actually baptizing in water. They're going to continue believing that. But no, the truth is here.